Well, I went to what was the Central Technical College, which was the only course in Queensland at the time. The university hadn't kicked off, I think. You'd have to check that.
This is 51.
51.
Didn't you do your final year at UQ?
I did later, yes.
Yeah.
We started off at Central Technical College, and we did the first 3 years there. And then a situation arose that U of Q had started, and in our year there were only 3 students, Peter Gargett, Anne Greenfield and Margaret somebody. And in the following year they only had 1 student, John Usinski. So we were obliged to go out to St Lucia, still at night, but it was a fair bugger because we all worked in the city, or nearly all. And so we ended up getting a peculiar thing called a Diploma of Architecture from the U of Q. But it was, I didn't think the training was nearly as good because I didn't care for Cummings. I think he was very clever. But the fellows at the Tech were all practising architects who lectured here, with one exception. A fellow that designed the old library at North Quay, Fluff Weller.
Yes.
He, well, when I say he was practising, he was working in an architect's office, but I don't know that he was ever a qualified architect.
And Charlie Fulton there?
Yeah, well, Charlie Fulton, Athol Bretnell, what was the name of that firm then? Clyde Jessup. Cole Jessup was there.
Teaching how to watercolour beautifully.
Yeah.
He was
He
great.
taught us how to watercolour, not about the beautiful bit, but you know, they were very serious architects.
And they were all at the technical.
At the Tech.
Yes.
And most of the people that were in my course were, well, not most, but well, there were 33 or something of us in first year, and they had a policy of weeding them out, you know, so there were 7 after in second year, and John Dalton, Wolf Dews, anyway, quite a few of them were ex-servicemen, and they'd sat around in camps for years thinking about the great new world that they were going to make after, and they influenced us a lot because they weren't in any way frivolous. Ollie Ryan was another one, or Owen Ryan, you might have him recorded as. Some of them weren't themselves great architects, some were, but they were very serious students, and so we green young fellows coming along, they taught us concentration and they taught us how to drink.
Important.
And who was teaching what? What was Bretnell teaching and what was Jessup teaching?
Bretnell was teaching interior design. Charlie Fulton was teaching design. I don't know what the others were doing now. It's all a bit blurry. And apart from which we were pretty tired because we'd knock off work at 5 and be down there at 6 and knock off at 9 and then go to the pub till 10 and then ride your motorbike home. And it wasn't very sensible way of living, but we got to know one another fairly well.
And were you also taught history of architecture?
Did?
History of architecture? Was somebody teaching?
Who taught us that? Aubrey Job. And Aubrey Job also taught building construction. And boy, what he knew about building construction. I wouldn't be too concerned if I didn't know what he didn't know.
Was
I later worked for Charlie Fulton and Job and learned a lot.
Well, was history the same as I would have got, which was straight out of Bannister Fletcher?
Exactly, Bannister Fletcher was the book. I bought mine from Stan Marquis Kyle, and I've still got it.
And it finished at the Renaissance.
I'd take your word for that, Robert. I can't really remember.
Well, there was no modern architecture taught, as far as
no.
my experience.
No, I think the actual book had a couple of pretty early, or my version has anyway, because there were lots of copies. You probably didn't even hear of that.
oh, I know.
Yes, yeah,
Right,
just-
absolutely, yes.
And I never really got any benefit out of it except when I went to Europe.
Yeah. So Aubrey Job was at the college, or was he at UQ?
He was at the college.
Okay, and when you came out to UQ, who were your teachers at UQ?
Oh, we had Bruce Lucas
Yeah.
and
It's a copy.
and Cummings.
Yes.
I can't think of anyone else out there.
So who finished with you?
Though.
Peter Gargett?
Yes, Peter, Anne Greenfield and Margaret whatever, and John Dalton, Wilfie Jers, Jim Gibson, who's also a neglected architect and has got a very nice church in Wynnum. He did jobs that are accredited to fellow was president of the institute and publicist for architects.
Tom Cross?
Tom Cross and Bain. Well, Jim was a sort of hidden partner there, but he was the one that really had the ability, and he did lots and lots of quite sound, sensible buildings.
I've not heard of him.
No, well that's why I'm raising him now, because I think it's important that he's remembered and noted. Bernie Bryan,
I mean, yeah.
memory fails me. If I think of any more, I'll tell you.
And
But there were 6 or 7 grades. With one exception, Eric Buchanan, all those who made it to second year made it to 6 years.